Hey everyone, welcome to the Sustain the Range podcast. I'm Lauren, your host, and this podcast is a personal exploration of my experiences in everything ranching. From beef operations to training horses to sustainable farming and regenerative practices, we'll cover it all. Each episode features enlightening conversations with guests who bring their unique perspectives and expertise. Whether they're seasoned ranchers or first-generation farmers, we all share a common bond and deep appreciation for the land and the livestock we raise. Tune in each week for engaging discussions, inspiring stories, and practical insights from the ranching community, and let's embark on this incredible journey together. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sustain the Range podcast. Guys, I'm so excited to share this episode with you today. I sit down with Cory Miller from Grass Valley Farms to dive into the world of soil health, sustainable farming, and the transformative power of nature-driven practices. Cory's ranch was where I began to understand the profound impact of cattle on land regeneration and learn about the importance of starting with the soil. It's also where I discovered my love for marketing for small farms and ranches. Cory has been a huge influence on me, and I can honestly say has been one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about soil health, cattle operations, and the importance of supporting farmers and ranchers. Cory's journey is truly inspiring. Raised by his mother and grandparents with very little in a trailer park to now owning multiple businesses, including the 1,000-acre ranch in Missoula, Montana. Although his entrepreneurial spirit started at age 6, his passion for soil health and farming began in adulthood. Since then, he has revolutionized Grass Valley Farms with innovative compost tea methods and has dramatically increased his hay and sod production, all while boosting organic soil matter and bringing abundant wildlife back to the land. Cory's love for his family is a huge part of his life too, and as I was editing this episode, I realized we didn't even talk about his wife or kids. He's a devoted husband to his wife Jamie and a father of 4 girls. I've had the privilege of getting to know them, and especially his 2 youngest girls, who are so sweet and just little spitfires, who I know are going to grow up to do something big just like their mom and dad. Jamie, his wife, is an extremely successful realtor and a great mom, and the best word that I can use to describe her is that she is just awesome. And altogether, they make a wonderful family. So join Cory and I for an enlightening conversation and be inspired by his story and expertise while we explore the future of sustainable farming and the incredible journey of Grass Valley Farms. Well, thank you so much, Cory, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. I know our audience is going to be so excited to have you here. So welcome to Sustain the Range.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. So I just wanted to ask you a few questions. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're from, your background, and how you got into agriculture.
Getting into agriculture is a short story, but everything else takes us for a long trip. Of course, grew up in Missoula, Montana, raised by my mom. And, of course, grandparents were always nearby, so spent a lot of time with my grandpa. He was a miner for Cominco fertilizer, so mined phosphate. And, so introduction to fertilizers early in life. Didn't know what they meant, didn't know what they did, but my grandpa always put them on his potatoes. And so, that was agriculture to me. Let's just put some of this magic stuff on it, and now plants grow. And so that's the early introduction. Growing up, and I would call ourselves quite poor. We lived in a trailer park, and my mom spent all of her time raising my brother and I, and introducing us to planting flowers. I mean, everything that I did came from my mom, at least at an early age, and then, of course, the influence from my friends. And I can assure you that none of them were planting anything in the ground. We were playing football, basketball, baseball, things that kids do. And, tight-knit community, great friends, and somewhat good motivations. I didn't want that life. I wanted the space. I didn't want to be in the city. And so kind of set off on this journey to every opportunity that came, I tried to take advantage of and expand it, make it better. And, fast forward to high school, I got, tasked with completing a senior project. And you could choose anything. You could pick to start a business. You could learn to ride a horse, anything you wanted to do. And I chose to do this project on starting a business. And so I got to research and write a paper on how you do that. And I had a mentor that taught me the steps in business. And as that continued, as I worked through that project for my entire senior year, it really opened up my eyes to a lot of opportunities out there in business. People need goods and services, and it intrigued me to be able to do that and to see how the market works and see how people look at and evaluate a purchase. And I chose to enter an industry or start my cleaning company in an industry that I knew was big, that had a lot of opportunity. And if someone really wanted to work hard, you could grow really large, really fast. And so that's what I spent my time doing. And it just so happens that in the late 90s, Clinton was president or finishing up his presidency. And there was a big push towards what we called at the time organic cleaning products. But, now they're evaluated as something that's more natural, or natural cleaning products. And I got really interested in chemistry and how these certain compounds affect living organisms, how you can kill single-celled organisms, because that's the goal. A lot of the cleaning we did was in operatories and surgery centers, and if I was going to go in and get a surgery, I didn't want to be in a dirty room. I didn't want the risk of my leg getting infected when I had ankle surgery in the same surgery center that I was cleaning. And so my focus was really on how can we effectively mitigate against, these bugs that are out there. And it was always negative. Everything was always a bad guy. My job was to kill everything that was living. And there's a lot of time at night where I said, what am I doing this for? Like, is it really helping us? Is it making me healthier? No, I started to notice that I was getting every cold that came around. I started to, think about why I was always so tired. I was working hard. I wasn't drinking coffee, but I still didn't feel great. And I was putting myself in these environments, and I was manipulating my body just in the environment I was working in. And started to ask those questions, what can be better? And, it kind of led me down this path of, it wasn't so much health at first. I wasn't going this way to feel better. It was just kind of this, as you go down it, you realize this enlightening of asking yourself, why is nature doing this to me? And I realized, there's these bugs, even though they're bad, somewhat beneficial. They help me build my immune system. They help me feel better. And kind of led me to a point that, maybe we should really get into agriculture. Maybe we should really start producing food that is better. And, long story, the background's way deeper, but to get to the point I am now in my career, that's the route that I took.
Yeah, and how cool that you kind of came to that kind of comparison relationship, because, you hear about a lot of farmers now talking about how they want to switch over to more regenerative practices where they've just been trying to kill everything from the beginning. That's how they grew up. You kill everything on the farm. You apply pesticides, all this kind of stuff. And then you kind of came to that conclusion even before you got into farming. Is that correct?
It was, yeah. It was, they're feeling it. There's farmers that I talk to. I've listened to Nicole Masters many times, and her story of just her health journey and what living next to big ag did to her. Yeah. That happens to a lot more people than we think. Paraquat, it's a bad chemical. The jury's out. People are having to pay a lot, or not people, but companies that produce glyphosate are paying a lot. Yeah. I'm not going to get into the argument of what's good or bad, but we all know that if something's designed to kill a plant, it can probably affect the cells in our body. Mm. And so we need to say, is this really the right thing? We've come so, I would say that the demands of the consumer are so specific that they want a clean product when they buy their produce. And what I mean by that is they don't want a tomato that has some sort of fungus growing on it. And so in order for the farmer to remove that, they've got to treat it with something.
Yeah.
And, our expectations are as a consumer that we get this really clean product. And I think it's more because it's polished, right? The tomato's really shiny. And in so doing, we accept that that is a good condition. But we all know that if we go in our own garden and we grow a vegetable or a tomato, for example, in our garden, it just always tastes better. Well, why is it? Well, there's maybe a chemical on the outside of that we're getting a taste from. Or it's unable to produce a certain flavor because it doesn't have the biology that the plant needs to make that particular compound.
Yeah.
And so you see that in everything. I mean, our cattle see it. They know where we're, not using chemicals on our grasses. It's obvious. They go and eat the good stuff first. Always, without question, more nutrition. They know what they want. They know what their body needs. They're going to seek it out. That's one thing is we get cravings as people, and it's, and I know when my wife had first kids, she always wanted to eat weird stuff. And I'm like, why? You've never wanted to eat that, bananas, lots of bananas. You never want to eat bananas. It's a thing. Our body tells us what we need. She was lacking in something. She had that. She felt good afterwards. Her body said, yeah, okay, keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And that happens in just about everything. Animals are just much more acute because they have a very limited diet. If you go to the salad bar, we get 25 choices or 50 choices. They get maybe 3 or 4. So they know what that smell or that taste gives them. They know what this other taste or smell gives them. And they have the ability to determine what they need.
Yeah.
If a cow eats too much alfalfa, it's too much protein, cause some problems. They get upset stomachs, so they know they need to mix in some roughage or some grass to calm it down.
Yeah.
We don't. We just keep piling in the pizza.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about, so did you kind of always know that you wanted to start your own business? Like after you through high school, was that the point where you were like, yeah, I want to just go right into entrepreneurship right after that?
I think when I was 5, 6 years old, we had lemonade stands in the neighborhood.
Cool.
And of course, there wasn't a lot of free-flowing cash around for people to buy our lemonade.
Yeah.
So we sold it for a nickel, and I think all the ones that we did, my mom said we need to raise our prices because we were losing money. We didn't care. I mean, I remember setting up, we called them card shops back then. Baseball cards or trading cards were super popular in the late 80s, and all the neighborhood kids got together and set up our card shops down at the park, and the older kids would come through and offer us way undervalue for what our cards were worth that we were so proud of.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and and then knew the value of money was important for me when I was younger. I'll always remember this. My uncle, and I don't know if this story's out there. I hope he hears it. But I was at his plumbing company, sweeping the floors and cleaning it up, and he pulls me in, and I'm young. I mean, I'm maybe 11, 10. And he says, "Hey, Cory, I'd like you," and it might have been Mother's Day or anniversary or something like that for him. I don't remember, but his shop was 2 blocks away from a flower shop, and he gives me $100 bill. Like, keep in mind, I've never even seen a $100 bill in my life before, but he gives me a $100 bill to go walk downtown Missoula to the flower shop, and he goes, "Go buy the most beautiful flowers you can get for $100. And my aunt, we spent a lot of time with her. She was kind of my second mom. And so I wanted to make her really proud. And I sat in there for like 4 hours, like building this perfect bouquet, picking it out. And I got back, and my uncle loved it, but he's like, "Why did it take you 4 hours to pick out flowers?" And so that's when I learned about efficiency. I had no clue what I was doing, but it really taught me, like, okay, you got to focus. if this is what you're going to do, find something you really like and try to emulate it. Who's really good at what you're doing? And so I saw the value of money. I realized that, for him, he was paying me maybe 50 cents an hour to sweep the shop. So it wasn't like it cost him a whole bunch for me to go get flowers. But it saved him a little time, and I realized I could start doing these services for people and making money. And just like every kid, you want to try to acquire a lawnmower and mow the neighbor's lawn, and there's money in that. And, started to build these little enterprises because, we didn't have excess money. My mom worked her butt off, paid for my brother and I to play sports, and that was her disposable income. She didn't go out. Looking at it, she had zero fun raising us besides spend time with family. Well, I'm not going to say zero fun, but she wasn't out, dancing or doing a lot of the things that, young adults do. She was busy, focused on her work, providing for my brother and I, and making sure that we had a really good opportunity to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. She sounds like an amazing woman.
Yeah, but back to it, my mind was always moving, how do we extract value from this?
Yeah.
Whether it be, my labor or my brain to create something. It was entrepreneurship was always my focus. I knew early on I wanted to be a dentist, and because I thought that was a good life, and only medical field where you worked 8 to 5 and very little on call time. But in college I started the business path and I started the dental path, and the dental path didn't last very long.
Yeah.
So got back to the basics.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And then so you have you had the cleaning business, and then did you have any other businesses that you started after that before Grass Valley?
I did, yeah. So right out of college, I think I was still in college. Anyway, long story short, my grandma was really important kind of mentor in my life, and I remember this conversation vividly, and I said, Grandma, I think there's a lot of opportunity in the waste business. I think that, you look at garbage companies, like they're operating on really old technology, right? They just drive around, pick this stuff up, put it in a pile and bury it. Maybe there's a way to become more efficient in that. And she linked me up with a guy that she was a cook. Her career was, she was a lunch lady at the school in Deer Lodge. And her principal at the time, early, I guess it was early, he wasn't her principal when I met him. But I asked her that question, do you know anybody in the waste business? Because I think there's something here. And at the time, there was 2 people. One was the Martz family out of Butte. They had a landfill. And Judy Martz was running for governor, I believe. I think that's the correlation, was running for governor. And there's a potential that their garbage company may come up for sale. But a lot of families that have garbage companies don't want to sell them. They're a good business. But there's this guy named Gary, and my grandma, he was her principal, but had left and started a medical waste disposal company. And said, you should call up Gary. If nothing else, have lunch with him. He's a great guy. And I said, okay. So I remember this phone call. It was exciting. I said, hey, Gary, my name's Cory. My grandma's Mary Lou, and would you be... Well, I'll tell you what, I'm graduating college. I'm looking for a job. I'd like to work for somebody like you that's innovative. I don't hire college kids. So, well, okay, why not? Because I got to teach them too much. You guys get out there, you don't know anything. Like, I want you to go work in the real world. And I said, well, it's hard to work in the waste business because I'm either a truck driver or a garbage picker. I don't get the opportunity to learn the business side of it. Said, well, I'm pretty busy right now. I don't have a whole lot of time. And I said, well, Gary, I'm getting my pilot's license and I have to do a solo cross country. Can I just fly over to Deer Lodge and have lunch with you? Oh, you're a pilot? I used to be a bush pilot in Alaska. I flew fish for 10 years. I was a principal at a school in the middle of nowhere, and I was the only way in and out, so I had to fly. So, yeah, can you come today? So I don't know, let me see if I can organize this. So called on my instructor and said, hey, I've got a launch date in Deer Lodge. Do you mind if I fly over and do my solo cross country? Weather was good, no problem. Gary met me there. We went to launch the next day. I was working for him. And he introduced me to the medical waste business. And what Gary did was extremely innovative. So at the time, sharps containers, right, were classified as a single-use surgical instrument.
Like the ones that you see at the...
Yeah, so the plastic containers you see on the walls in hospitals.
Okay.
So think about this concept. You put your garbage in the garbage can, and then you take the whole garbage can with the garbage in it and throw it away. Mm-hmm. Time and time and time and time again. And in a hospital emergency room or in an operating room, they're changing those out daily, right? So just think about the plastic. Think about the oil that's used to produce those. And so Gary came up with his idea that he could build a reusable sharps container. And he tasked me with helping him in that process. And that was probably one of the coolest things I've done in my life is working on a proposal with the FDA to get this reusable sharps container allowed to be in operating rooms that's classified as a surgical instrument. Like, how do we put, blood and what we call, pathogens into this container, let it sit there for days, weeks, months, multiplying, becoming even worse, empty those containers or empty those needles and other things, candy bar wrappers and things that get put in these sharps containers, clean them back to a sterile grade and return them back to the hospital. Like, it's going to be a difficult task to get that approved. Well, just so happened I came from the cleaning industry, so I knew everything there was on the cleaning side, and so helped develop the program and the process to get this approved. And I think it was a year and a half later, we had a plan. It was approved. We had a container design that passed DOT standards, and Gary started marketing this container. And at first they're like, whoa, that's I don't know if we can do this. I said, well, it's all FDA approved. The process is good. We know it'll work. And so in the early stages with Gary implementing this reusable sharps container process, and you look, most hospitals, well, definitely in the United States, all have reusable sharps containers now. Because
so
you think about it.
So were you guys the first ones to do it?
Yeah, it was put together by Gary. And he sold his company, oh gosh, don't get me wrong, maybe 2012, 2010, to Stericycle, one of the biggest med waste companies in the world. And, that was a difficult thing because now they controlled that container. And so another company has to go through all that investment and now, fix the process that we did without us being able to tell them how we did it because Gary had sold it, and so we were contracted. We couldn't. Excuse me. Which, that was a bummer because I wanted these in every third world country. I thought that if we could lower that waste stream in plastic by 30%, like, we were making a significant impact in the waste that a hospital generates.
Yeah. And
so anyway, long story short, I don't like going into hospitals or getting shots, but every one that I go into now, I see a container that I helped design on the wall. Yeah. And, it's exciting. I never thought that a call or a quick discussion with my grandma about somebody in the waste business would turn into this project. Long story short, Gary and I have been best friends since that day. Yeah. He lets us borrow his equipment. We go on vacations together. And it's, you gravitate towards like-minded people. And Gary looked at me and said, I'm the same kid that he was when he was younger. And, I feel the same way, too, about some of the kids that I meet. That kid is exactly like I was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's it says a lot about you, and obviously, you know, you talked a lot about your family too and how you grew up, but just the fact that you had like the confidence and the go-getter attitude to like make that happen and, you know, call these people up and ask them to give you a chance, where there's people out there who kind of talk themselves out of it before they even, you know, make the call.
Yeah.
So,
That's
you
one thing
know,
when I was younger, I wasn't afraid to ask.
yeah.
And I will say this, I've been told no a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So as I've gotten older, I've gotten a little bit more, you know, you come to a point when you ask for a lot of favors through your life, right? You get to a point where you're like, okay, well, now I'm in a position to kind of give favors back. And maybe I should kind of quit asking for those favors, you know, with family especially. And you know, I'm kind of at that point now. Like, I really want to be the helper and a lot less of the needer, you know, the person that needs something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I've definitely seen that from you, even just at the ranch and whatnot, when people have come, hey, you can borrow this tractor if you ever need anything, you know,
yeah,
let me know. So
and sometimes it's a detriment, you know, we lend out our drill and
comes back broken.
it comes back broken. And then it's when we need it and I'm scrambling to find parts or get parts in to fix it. And
Yeah.
so that's a bummer, but I think there's always some value in being a good neighbor. And, well, I shouldn't say some. There's a lot of value.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how nice and fancy my stuff is, it will break, and it will break at the wrong time, and I will need somebody to help me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing all that, Cory.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about soil health and your introduction to, you know, Soil Food Web School and how you kind of made that choice to go down that path.
Initially, it was purely financial. Mm-hmm. You know, the first quote I got for fertilizer in 2021 when I bought the main big ranch was $84,000. And I was like, okay, so what am I going to get back out of that? And it didn't pay. Now, keep in mind, 2021 fertilizer is on the way up. 2022, of course, the highest prices we've had in a long time. And I just didn't see that as sustainable, you know, purely from a financial standpoint. Am I going to get the returns? I might, but it's taking me down this path to maybe more inputs and less return in the future. And keep in mind, like, I was naive. I didn't understand how large agriculture worked, right? I just thought, I mean, it helped people put up hay, and I just assumed turn the water on, the grass grew. You cut the grass, bundled the hay or baled the hay, and then stacked it, and that was it. And there was the furthest from the truth that it could possibly be. You know, there was way more in science, way more in timing, and way more in context than I knew when I started. And of course, everybody, when you feel like you're going to fail, you choose to research and learn, right? How am I going to get out of this mess? And, you know, of course, it wasn't a mess at that point. It was actually good. The ground I got was in a pretty good state when I acquired it. And I said, let's go forward and see if there's an alternative. Can we get away from applying so much fertilizer and still keep production up? And it led me to find people like Gabe Brown and then dig deeper and Alan Williams and, you know, how beneficial it was to have livestock. And brought in at that time my stepdad. His name's Kevin. He biologist by trade and business person, helped develop or was one of the early on employees for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and really helped that organization take off. But his passion was biology and understanding, you know, how nature worked. And he spent, you know, the better part of his life, whether it's on the ocean or in the forest, understanding that dynamic. And so I had an expert right next to me. I just didn't take advantage of that. And so I asked Kevin, hey, Kevin, what do you think? And he introduced me to the relationships between every animal we have on the ranch. And at first it was, we do not mess with anything. these animals will tell us the direction we need to go. So, Kevin, I don't really have that much time. We've got to do something about that. And the story's so funny because, I like to shoot gophers. Who doesn't? I mean, there's some
squirrels too.
Yeah, no, just Colombian ground squirrels. We have a hate relationship. They're thankful that we provide them lots of good grass to eat, but I absolutely hate them because I always step in their holes and hurt my ankle, and then it ruins my summer.
Yeah.
And Kevin told us that, they serve a purpose. They're feeding the badger that's feeding, they're part of this cycle, the birds especially. And so I introduced Kevin to changing handline and said, Kevin, all right, you're going to help us change handline. And we're out there changing pipe, and he's stepping in these gopher holes, and he's going down and, really getting hurt. He had to stay home from the ranch a couple days because his ankle was swollen. Yeah. And he decided to go and get him a really tuned-up 22 because he didn't like the squirrels anymore either. So there's this whole biological management part that we came to a conclusion that we were going to grow grass in the best way we could, but it meant that we were probably going to have to do it without the Colombian ground squirrel. And so, long story short, we did. That knowledge, that came in that time led me to really what happens under the soil. Why does the grass grow so green right around a gopher mound? What are they doing? Well, they're loosening the soil, right? They're digging a hole and loosening the soil. So a little aeration, maybe solving a compaction issue. What else are they doing? Well, they're going to the bathroom. They come out of the hole, they use the bathroom, they pee and poop right around the surface of the hole. What is that doing? That's putting nitrogen back into the soil. And it's really green and grows really good right around their hole, as long as they're not eating it as fast as it's growing. But it is. If you look at it, it's darker and green in color. It's growing faster than the surrounding. It's okay, well, now they're fertilizing. And you start to see that Mother Nature tells a story. And it's really a pretty simple story. Observe, adapt, change, continue. And so Dr. Elaine Ingham kind of put this process on the microbial level into understanding. If you're searching, well, what is soil biology and how does it work? For me, later in life, it wasn't like I could go back and open up a textbook and read it and try to understand it. I wanted in-depth, super deep, full understanding of how biology worked. What they were, what they looked like, what they ate, who they ate, how they interacted in that microenvironment, and then what the results were of overpopulation or depopulation, how it changed the dynamic. And I got that in her course, and I felt when I completed that I had a really good understanding of all of those technical aspects of soil biology. What I wanted to do then was go and make this biology as fast as I could and get it out on my soil. And so I did that. We got an extractor, we started making compost, we bought compost, we tested compost, we did everything we could to find the good mix. And started putting it out on the fields, and I wasn't getting the results. And by results, I mean I wasn't seeing the biology that I was producing actually in my soil in abundant levels, right? So what did that mean? Well, I'm making aerobic compost, and I'm putting it down on compacted clay soils. So what's that telling me? Well, the environment that I'm putting this, what I call good biology, into is not a safe place. It's not a desirable place for that because it's compacted. It's anaerobic. They can't get inside of this clay because it's too packed. So what's going on here? And I realized that that's a mistake. I need to be getting this biology subsurface. I need to apply at times when it's conducive to biological application and not what's conducive to me. And all of a sudden, by making a few simple changes, poking some holes in the ground, putting biology on seed, boom, things started happening. You know, I could find protozoa in my fields. I could find nematodes in my fields. And it was because I wasn't giving them the environment they wanted to live in. And I didn't know that. I thought you just, like every potion, you just put it out there and it works. No, everything, Mother Nature is, you know, there's a reason why she always changes, is because she is one step ahead of us. And if something will always fill the vacuum. And, you know, once I understood that, it made it a lot easier to manage these farm decisions.
Yeah.
So I got involved because I had to. I needed to know what was going on. I needed to solve these problems. And then it's books. I mean, you've been out to the ranch. You've seen my library. We've got, you know, I'm not afraid to buy books and put them on the shelf because there is always a question that comes up that I don't know the answer to, but I do have a place I can go look.
Yeah.
And find it. You know, it's the power of Google and the power of YouTube is somebody out there has made the same mistake that I just made. I just got to find them.
Yeah. And one thing I've always noticed about you too is that you self-study, you know, like you seem to teach yourself so many things where you just go out and read where, you know, sometimes there's other people feel like maybe we have to go back to school to learn this or whatever, but you seem to have really studied, researched, learned, and then actually applied what you've learned to the ranch and look what you've done with the soil.
Yeah, I mean, that's real learning. If you can't apply it, or you don't know, or you're afraid to try to apply it, you know, and keep in mind, some of these experiments cost money and they're expensive to have the materials to do, but I think they're worthy investments, right? We treat, you know, big companies, their research and development budget is always, you look at that and you're like, oh my God, they should be discovering all kinds of cool stuff if they're spending that much money. It's expensive to research and expensive to develop. And a lot of times you fail. And for us, it's how do we fail as, like everybody, as minimally as possible. And yeah, the dynamic is interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing. So could you actually talk a little bit about like the compost barn setup? So when I first got to the ranch, I don't even think I even knew what like a nematode was. And then you were conducting all these soil health classes and I was wanting to be there, you know, every week because every time I listened to you speak, I learned something new about soil health. Yeah. And that's what really got me really interested in this and, you know, where this even podcast comes from. Your farm really set something in motion for me where I was like, I was always interested in the land. I always, you know, I come from like a holistic health background, right? I want to do right by the land, by the animals. Nature and natural stuff is always best. But, you know, when I got to your ranch and I saw all that you were doing with the soil health and everything, it's like, wow, this stuff is super cool. So could you just talk a little bit about like the compost barn and the soil that you're making and how you're testing it and looking at it under the microscope?
Yeah, so we started, you know, I wanted to make it open because early on, people were asking me, what are you doing? And I said, well, I can explain it to you and it's going to take an hour or 5 hours to make it make sense. Or you can just come out and I'll show you. You know, what my morning is like and how I look at soil and what we're looking for. And so the first couple people came out and they absolutely loved it, right? And it was, what was it? It was just, we sat there and we talked about what biology is, how it works, how biology cycles nutrients in the soil. And that stuff all sounds really boring if someone's just telling it to you. But when you come out on the ranch and we go to the compost barn and we pull back the covers and we look inside and we see life in the soil and we pull it up and we smell it. And I've tasted it and you just see like, wow, this does smell really good. I mean, this smells like the forest floor. That's what it should smell like. Like if we have compost that stinks or we're smelling some nasty smell in there, well, that's because we're not doing it right. And people, I can never make compost. Like, no, really, it's way easier than you think. It's just the right mix, right? If it stinks, then you have areas that aren't getting oxygen. You're developing anaerobic biology and each of them usually has a pretty distinct smell. All of the bad smells you've smelled in your life, I've smelled in compost. And the purpose was to, continue this teaching. And so as we started to make really good compost and started to see really active biology, I mean, to the tune of, we're going to count in a field of view at a 400x magnification, we're going to count 50 to 60 protozoa, perhaps more, when we've got big fungal strands going through the middle. And then we've got, in a field of view, 3 or 4 nematodes moving around. And then you open up that layer and you get down to the size of looking at bacteria, and it's completely full. And everything is breathing, moving, living. Like, that's what life is. When you pull a sample of the rainforest, for example, or in our case, you've been there up Butler Creek, a lot of life up there. You have water that's constantly moving through, a good canopy of trees, good cover on the ground, leaf litter throughout. You pull samples of that, it looks the same as our compost. But you go and you pull a sample in our field, and you find bacteria, and that's it. Well, why is that? And it's because tillage. We're breaking relationships. We're applying chemicals that are killing active biology. And we realize that everything we're doing in ag is at the expense of the soil, specifically. But then that moves into the plants that are in that soil and then into us as people. And by seeing it, it makes a lot more sense. And I think that was the impression when I started the class to make, is that, like, I want people that come here, I want their mind to be blown for 1 hour, and I want them leaving having 500 questions that may help them adapt this to their environment, their garden in their yard, their plants in their house, whatever it is. Because I think it is key. A simple understanding of how food's grown, and everybody can grow their own. I'm not saying people have the space or it's economically viable to do so, but I do know that a tomato that I grow is far better than any tomato I've ever bought at a store.
Yeah, totally.
And so, for me, it was just to educate my neighbors. And I've learned a lot too. I've had some amazing soil scientists come through and, help me even get better at my craft. I'll never forget the lady and her husband that came and I forget what agency in the federal government they work for, but were responsible for a lot of the cleanup on Chesapeake Bay, and how biology helped them, or once they started, there was a bacterial issue that was causing a problem in oysters, and once they realized what was feeding that bacteria and causing it to bloom, they could correct that, or correct these chemicals that were going in, and all of a sudden it started to clean up itself. And carbon is an amazing thing. Carbon can hold water, carbon can feed biology, carbon can do some amazing things. In our soil, everybody talks about, well, what is good soil quality? Well, we have the heaviest clay that I have ever seen. I mean, our soil that we're growing in should be used to make pottery. It's that, if it's wet, you ain't getting around. I mean, you've been there, you're trying to ride horses in the clay hills. It's next to impossible, but it does hold a lot of moisture. And so it allows us in this, we only get 12 inches of rain a year, which, of course, some people that's a lot, but most people that's not enough. And we're trying to grow. We do have irrigation, but we've been able to increase our soil organic matter to, anywhere on the ranch, we're between 8 and 10% soil organic matter, which is really, really, really high. It's better than, our farmed fields now have equal to or better organic matter than our native areas on the ranch. And that's helped us cut back in water. It's helped us cycle nutrients. It's helped us build something that's resilient. We are now in a state that we can, drought is not good, but it's not going to hurt us that bad, and you've been gone a bit for the winter, but you look out here in April, we should see snow on the mountains. We don't have any.
Yeah.
I'm nervous. I'm contemplating moving our entire haying schedule around this summer just because it's going to be so smoky here that our grass isn't going to dry. I've been through fires before where we had 30 days of smoke and our hay would not dry.
Yeah.
And so we've got to seriously think about what we're going to do this year. We may not even have water for irrigation. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people really scrambling. Snowpack's at 30 to 40% of normal. There's some benefit. It is starting to come up. We've got 5 days of rain, fingers crossed, ahead of us.
Yeah.
That maybe these will pick up, but I feel okay because we're building a farm that's resilient.
Yeah.
We're able to store a little more water than our neighbors. Hold that back if it rains. I know it's going to stay on our land and not head to the neighbors. And our soil's definitely not going to go away.
Yeah.
So,
if someone wanted to apply like the compost to the land, so maybe they have, a very small acreage, mm-hmm. What would your advice be to the farmer rancher who wants to maybe start this on their property?
Well, I would tell them initially keep it as simple as possible, right? I think composting, we all overthink it. If you search composting, there's thousands of ways to skin that cat, right? And what we've found is that once you have good biology, it's really easy to provide a food source and then use that good kind of what we call our mother pile as inoculant for new piles. And you can source that from people, your friends, your neighbor, other people is composting. Use that inoculant to help get the good stuff early on in your process. And then it's start making composters. Our initial process is a thermophilic pile process that Dr. Elaine teaches. 3 turns, get it all up to temperature, and then it becomes, and then it's the curing time. And that could be anywhere from 30 to 90 days till it's ready and broken down in just a good compost. Moisture 50%, and not introducing worms or allowing worms to come in through the soil. And that's the product. And then what we do is we actually take that and store it, in a method that Dr. David Johnson developed. And we do that for fungal development and to keep it aerobic. And that's kind of what I have found to be the most successful way for us to do what we're doing on a large scale. But when applying extracts and inoculating seed, you don't need a lot of compost. I can produce an inoculant to inoculate, 2 acres of corn with a half a cup of compost. That's really good quality. And that will put enough biology on that corn to give me what I need or for the purposes that I need. And we make, as you get deeper into this, you start making specific compost for specific purposes. So a real balanced compost is our seed inoculant. Something that we're putting in the field to break down old or dead plant material. We're going to go higher fungal. If I want cows to eat thistle, we're going to mix compost extract with molasses and we're going to spray the thistle and the cows will absolutely go over there and devour it.
Yeah.
And we can teach them to eat some of the things that they don't like. And then all of a sudden they become a staple for their diet because they realize they got some important vitamin out of it. So, for us, I've taken it to the extreme of how complicated we can make our product just for testing and sampling. And trust me, you don't have to go that far. You get results with just a very simple compost that will help your soil change rapidly right away. You don't have to spend a ton of money. An extractor can be made with a 5-gallon bucket and cheesecloth just to get the biology into water that then you can spray on seed and put in the ground. And if you really want to do something exciting, soak your seed in compost extract overnight and then plant it the next morning. you'll have germination in 24 to 36 hours. You know, I wish we could get that in our fields. We just can't, because we can't put a wet seed through a drill. They'd all stick together and we'd have a huge mess. But if I had the time to soak and then place in the soil, oh my God, that would be my dream. But it's really hard to do on scale.
Yeah, but then last year you inoculated the corn seeds.
We did.
Right?
We did. We inoculated corn. We planted it way late. And the purpose was just grazing corn. We had taken a cut of hay off of, it was triticale and peas. Taking that off the field. So we didn't plant corn until second week of July. But by September, it was still over our head. And
it grew
no fertilizer added.
Yeah.
And so it was a great thing to do. I mean, we sent Johnny in to swath some rows in it. The whole purpose was to use it for pheasant hunting and cattle feed. What's really crazy is we grew it last summer, but our cattle are eating it today. We're actually calving on it, and they're actually happy. It gives some good shade. It gives some cover. Those little calves can get behind some corn stalks and stay warm. And I thought of that as, well, this maybe should, like, this might be, everybody's going to tell me I'm dumb, or it's going to work out really well. And so all winter we pheasant hunted it. So we had people in and out all winter, almost every day pheasant hunting. And then now we're calving on it. So this corn is becoming very valuable to us. And not in the sense that we're growing corn for seed, but we're using the corn for soil health. So once the cattle finish up, we'll go through it with a flail mower that we have and really grind that material up. We'll throw our really fungal dominated extract over it to try to speed up the process of breakdown. And then we're going to seed right into it with wheat and peas. And the wheat and peas this year will become our pheasant food.
Nice.
And we'll harvest that, we'll store it, and now we've got feed for pheasants and actually some pigs that we have. Grown good and ready for next year. So now all of a sudden we're sustainable. We're producing what we need to bring it back, and then adding value to those industries, or value adding the products that we have.
Yeah.
But good. I mean, nothing goes to waste there. If all else fails, just give it to the cows.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you mentioned, the pheasant hunting and, some other different enterprises that you have on the ranch. So could you talk a little bit about, your, like the hay and the sod and all that you're doing on the ranch, and then, what kind of led you to start doing that, and then also, lead into a little bit about why having multiple enterprises on a ranch as of today and currently with prices being what they are and, everything. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. We have to make money, for this enterprise to be sustainable. And, like right now it's fairly easy. Well, I'm not going to say easy. Nothing's ever easy, but cattle prices are really high. So it looks good to be in cattle. But that changes. Everything that goes up must come down. And so there'll be a point where the dynamic will change. And what do we do when that happens? The income that we were used to last year when you're selling steers at $1,700 a piece, when the average is $500 to $600, you're 3 times the calf price standard or average price. So it's really easy to spend on things that maybe are right, but I don't see that as the answer, right? Is it, we've been waiting 6 years for, 2016, 8 years for good calf prices. And so what does it mean? We just get a new truck now because prices are good? No, it means we got to invest in what we have and continue to develop these businesses. So beef is one portion. We run about 200 head of cattle across the landscape. They're in our farmed fields, or in our hay fields, or everywhere. Only at limited times, and high intensity mid grazing, I think, is the only way to run cattle. We do bale grazing in the winter to try to improve some of our weaker soils, and really had a good program this winter. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen this spring, because we made a mess up there. And I think it's going to be, this field that we did it in, it's clay hills that hold water. And it rained one day and it looked just like the surface of the moon. Like every hoof print was full of water. And so we had, 100,000 lakes through this 10, 20 acre piece just holding that water. Each of them feeding, the crested wheatgrass that was next to it, which crested wheatgrass is not a great grass to graze cattle on. I mean, it's good in the sense that for 2-week period, it's phenomenal. But other than that, the rest of the year, it's worthless. And so now we've got irrigation to this area. We're going to be able to plant some more exciting annuals in there and really make some stockpiled forage. And it'll give us something for next year. And with the ultimate goal that we don't want to feed hay anymore. We want to sell it all. If we produce hay, we want it all sold to the people that don't have the ability to grow grass, but want their horses or their cows. Aside from that, we produce and sell sod. We also do some custom work, so we'll sell our compost extract to people, we'll spray for them, we'll apply for them. We make biofertilizers and apply those. We do harvest host, which allows people to come to the ranch, visit our place, but it gives us the opportunity to sell them some of the products that we make. So in our case, beef, pork, honey, eggs, all those products, and they love it. I mean, we sell a lot of product every day to people that are just coming to visit the ranch. And then in the winter time, we have our pheasant hunting operation. It starts in September, ends in March 31st every year. And that gives us an opportunity to really share the range with other people. And the question was early on is like, Cory, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing people to come out here and hunt? And to me, it was, it allows me to employ. I don't have a lot of work to do in the wintertime. We're feeding cows, and now that we're bale grazing, really we're just checking on them. Just a quick ride up to take a look around, make sure everybody's happy, healthy, and then we're done. So, maybe an hour a day. And hunting allowed us to keep our summer help on, working in full time throughout the year. And this year, we doubled the size of our club we started this in the fall, or we acquired another club, brought it to our land in the December of 22. So in 23, 24, we doubled the size of it. We released onto our place double the birds that we did the previous year. And it showed me that we're going in the right direction. And it was almost too busy. I mean, I think there were 2 days in the entire 7 months that we didn't hunt. And it was because it was Christmas Day and another day because the weather was so bad. But it's income that we would miss out on if we didn't do something. And it's not like we make much money, but it gives us now a whole lot of pheasants running around fertilizing our fields. It gives us the opportunity to sell people other products that we produce. So they come in and pheasant hunt, buy jerky and snack sticks. And it gets us into a community that I've really kind of enjoyed being a part of. The conservation side of pheasant habitat. And to meet these people that are working hard every day to increase that. I can tell you when I started this, it wasn't where I thought we would be going. But we've made it a focus on kids. We like kids to come out and pheasant hunt. And it's allowed us to keep what I would call hedgerows, in England or here, fence lines, but these areas of the ranch that we have that we can't farm. There's always something, too much water, doesn't drain well, whatever it is, but typically those areas grow some really good thick grass. And pheasants love it. And pheasants really like coming out onto the edge of a field and eating wheat seeds that are sitting from the last harvest. They even actually really like alfalfa leaves. But they will eat this stuff, and in so doing, they make it now, or they're converting for us. So they're just another animal in the food chain that is converting mineral from plant leaf into new cells on the ground, or new mineral particles on for the soil and for the plants to use. Yeah. So this whole cycling process.
Well, yeah, and even just when you were just mentioning that too, like we were out there yesterday, and there was 3 bald eagles flying around.
They're huge this year.
Yeah.
They look like pterodactyls up there.
They're huge. But just the importance of, like, when you start doing right by the land, and, you kind of talked about this a little bit before, one of the best indicators is seeing that wildlife and that diversity come back to the land. When you have depleted soil or depleted nutrients, there isn't a ton of presence of wildlife, right? But yeah. I've seen it firsthand on your ranch where, there's a bald eagle here, even, the gophers or the squirrels or the geese and the ducks. And, there's just an abundance of wildlife there.
Well, when you have a lot of wildlife, I feel kind of bad, right, for the animals, because we've created this environment where everything out there has to be looking over its shoulder. Uh-huh. Yeah. Because it doesn't matter from bacteria at the smallest form, up through protozoa that eats them, up through nematodes that eat bacteria, all the way through to, I would say the bear in the food chain. There is a predator that is going to eat every piece of prey we have on the ranch. Yeah. And we've created that. Like, we don't want to even kill the bacteria. We want them to be there actively producing to feed our protozoa, that are actively cycling nutrients, that are going back into our plants, that are bringing in, I hate to say it, but Colombian ground squirrels, because the grass is so good. And we're using less water, so it's a little drier, so they can build their burrows and we're not flooding them out, which is really hard to do anyway. But long story is that this food chain now is very full, and we have predators along the way that will control those populations. Now, when the snow went away, I was really upset that we had some areas of the sod field that had vole infestations, and I was pissed off at the owls because they weren't doing their job. Mm-hmm. But why is that? Well, we've been a lot more active with our pheasants hunting into owl nesting areas. And so I realized that I didn't see a lot of owls is because they weren't coming to their normal roost to spend their winter. They weren't coming to the same tree that they have for many years, and it was because we had people in those areas, and makes me kind of feel bad that maybe I messed up this little bit of kink in the system, that now those owls aren't there out feeding on the voles in my sod field. And so we're going to change some stuff this year. There's going to be designated owl areas. Because even though we have all the pheasants, and the pheasants will go in there, that's fine. But I don't want dogs and people in there. Let's give these owls a chance, because 99.99% of their diet is voles, the long-eared owl. And we have lots of them on our place, at least historically. But it's a much more active place now, and owls don't like a lot of people around. Yeah. In general. They don't like a lot of anything around. They just kind of sit in their tree all day, and then at night, they're like F-18 Hornets. They're striking, taking out every vole that walks, moves, squeaks, whatever. Yeah. And so, some changes that I noticed even this winter. And we're constantly changing every year on how we do what we do. Yeah. Always a balance. From every year, different, right? You have to make changes and you have to balance it out. Yeah. What would your advice be to people who want to get into agriculture? So maybe they want to get into ranching and farming, or maybe they're just saying, hey, I want to support people that are doing this. What would your kind of advice be to the first person and then to the consumer? If I could do it all over again, there is truly some value in plant science. Agriculture is one thing. I think in general terms, agriculture, what we believe it is now, is the applications of all of these inputs. And I don't think that's the case. But I really think there is a big disconnect between how plants function. And I know when I got in, I didn't understand how they functioned. I knew they did this thing called photosynthesis, which turned CO2 and nitrogen into sugar for energy, or use energy from the sunlight to turn this into, in simple terms, sugar, and then stored that for its time of use. That's what I thought a plant did. But I didn't know that it needed boron to open up a door in the stomata, or in the cell of the leaf, to allow that sugar to be moved to the roots in the form of exudates. I didn't know how important magnesium or copper or zinc were for the health of the plant. It has an immune system just like us. It can attack and be attacked and sustain attack. And so I didn't understand how that process worked. And I think that's my biggest concern, is that, I studied college level biology and chemistry. I couldn't tell you what was happening with a plant in the soil biology before this process. So if you want to be a farmer, I think there's two things. Understand how plants work, what minerals each need, how deficiencies show up, and then how they're affected by that. And then I think chemistry is important too. Understand what chemicals these plants need. And by chemical, I mean the compounds, but more specifically, the minerals to make those compounds. And if you're going to farm, find places that are abundant in each of those. There's no sense reinventing the wheel. If you're going to farm, get good land. Don't go and till up some prairie just because it's available and it's cheap. Find good land. Find a good product that your market needs. And when you found those things, then go forward. A lot of times it's reaction, right? My dad is, or, grandpa is not doing too well, health-wise, and you go through this transition process from one generation to the next on the farm, and the new person taking it has just paid a lot of money to the older generation for retirement, so they don't have a lot to invest in what they want to do. So they're stuck doing the same process that they've done before, that the family has done before. And that is, in my opinion, it's great that they get the opportunity, but it's an absolutely terrible position to farm from. Mm-hmm. That, and I'm not saying that the way that we do things is the best, because I know it's not. There's always going to be new stuff, and there's going to be people that refine the system better than I have. But in understanding, the biology of the soil and how plants metabolize and grow, that's valuable if you're going to do it yourself. Now, if you're going to be in a cattle operation, I don't think it's necessary. But it is still really important to grow grass, because every farmer, all you are is a solar farmer. We're using sun energy to create a product that we're either selling to somebody as that product, or we're feeding to beef, value adding our grass, turning it into protein and selling the protein. Or pork or whatever, chickens, whatever we're feeding to get to that point. So, how do we do it efficiently? If I can grow, 150 bushel corn, but I can grow it for half the cost of my neighbor who's growing 180 bushel corn, well, there's a high likelihood that I'm going to be more profitable. And so we look at it from that standpoint. If it doesn't pay the bills, we definitely aren't going to do it. But if it doesn't benefit our soil, we're also definitely not going to do it.
Yeah. But I think that that's probably a really hard thing to come by. How can we do this profitably? And if we have to change it from what we've been doing in the past, that can be a really hard change. And for the first couple of years, maybe it's a really expensive change, but it ends up working out down the road. But it's really hard to see sometimes 3, 4, 5 years down the road when you're kind of maybe losing out on a bunch of money because you're trying to make this change, whether it's from not buying a bunch of chemicals and turning towards more regenerative practices. That can be a really expensive change in the beginning,
It is. It is. I mean, I can attest to that especially if you're unprepared for it. There's a lot of people that have made the transition now from conventional to regenerative. We were lucky the transition started before I got here, so the soil was in a good state. It was ready for the opportunity to be better, or to, put in everything that it could. I just had to get it what I needed to get going.
Yeah.
And, that's important. I think you'd ask me if there's any advice to give to people, and it always comes back. I can talk forever about all the mistakes I made. But it's really hard to think about what you did good, because it just works and you forget about it.
Yeah.
And now it becomes, it's my new paradigm that we do it that way because it worked. So, the big thing is just, you got to have a passion for it. I remember the day you showed up out there to the ranch and last summer and learned the class the year, came to class the year before, but last summer spent some time out there and got to ride. And I could see, you had a vision for this. You wanted to do this. I wanted the opportunity, and it was like, you just always were out there and doing it. And, it was exciting to see, because not everybody is like that. Like, I get a lot of motivation from being able to motivate others. And, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's more than just telling someone what to do as advice. It's more about get out and explore and find what you love and take it to the next level every day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like you've done that for a lot of people, even, the kids that are there, Josh and Matthew. I mean, you've given them an opportunity where, even for Josh, he maybe was like, oh, that would be cool to do that one day, but now you've kind of given him the opportunity where now he's, handling the cows. And I
never thought I would pull a straight A student away from college to come work on a ranch.
Exactly, there you go.
But he absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we try to create. There's always dynamics and everything that you can't always control, and there's personalities that are sometimes bigger than you want, but we have a little bit of everything, and it's nice because Kevin's kind of the wise old owl on the ranch, and you need to know anything scientifically, you go ask Kevin, and he will speak to you in exactly what it says in the literature. Yeah. The scientific name of the animal, what it eats, average life expect, anything you want to know about it, Kevin's got it memorized. And you got Tina, that, our mechanic's a female, and she absolutely loves taking tractors apart and putting them back together and fixing the stuff we have. And, she has painted nails, but they're always covered in grease. Like, to me, that's awesome.
Yeah.
People find what they like. Josh, I didn't even think he'd seen a cowboy boot before he got to the ranch, and now I don't think you'll find him ever in something else.
Yeah.
It's just, it gets a kind of a hold of your heart, and you appreciate what collectively we're doing, and I think everybody wants to do just a little bit more to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's fun.
Yeah, it is. It is, and you do have to love it, So I always like to ask this question, and I feel like I listen to a ton of podcasts, and this question is asked a lot, but I just love hearing people's answers. So what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Oh, man. So this is an interesting story. I was a senior in high school and had a really good German buddy, best friend, best man at my wedding. And anyway, we were in politics, and I got selected to go to New Hampshire for a presidential primary debate and be on a questioning panel. And this was the particular debate, I think was, I don't remember, but we were sitting down with Alan Keyes, who was at the time running for president. He was African American, conservative Republican. So things that I don't think of in Montana as a conservative Republican. And interviewing him, I've got Alex, my German buddy, with me, and we go in and we're shaking hands, and he says, "So, are you going to vote for me?" And Alex says, "Well, sir, I would, but unfortunately I'm a German citizen." And he asked him, "What does that mean?" And he said, "Well, errare hermanum est, which is to err is human." And him using that context, an American guy talking in Latin, a German guy, which is not his native language, talking in Latin to a guy that's running for president of the United States. And it didn't make a lot of sense to me then, but I say that a lot now, because we all make mistakes, and it doesn't matter what it is, whatever we're doing, whether it be in work, family, church, whatever, we all fail, right? So you have to realize that and know that you can always do better. And so, hearing that day, which made no sense to me at the time, but was purely because he was German and he couldn't vote in our election, and he was participating in this American political process with me. And I'll never forget, 10 years later, I'm in Germany at his wedding, and they're doing their presidential elections, and Angela Merkel had just gotten elected for the third time. And, it was the celebration of his wedding, and then the next day was the celebration of their presidential election. And just to see how important it was to them, that mistakes were cool and we were going to get better. It's not huge advice, but it's something that's small, that that you're going to fail, you're going to err, and that really doesn't matter. What matters is if you can put your boots back on and fix it.
Yeah. That's great advice.
So.
Yeah. And so wait, what was the
Errata hermanum est.
All right, I'm going to have to put that one in the show notes. I'll have to look up how to spell that one.
Yeah, I'll find out. I'll get you the exact spelling.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's awesome. Thank you, Cory. So one more thing I'd like to ask, could you share like a favorite book or a podcast or resource that you would suggest to people who might be interested in anything that we talked about?
Oh man, there's so many good ones out there. I've just started reading For the Love of Soil by Nicole Masters. I'm not going to say it's the best book because there's so much. I wish what I could do is I could take all of my favorite authors that I've learned the most from and take the best things that they say and put it into one book called The Bible of Regenerative Agriculture. Because there are so many good parts of everybody's. And one thing you'll find in regenerative agriculture is nobody gives you a roadmap. Nobody says do steps A through Z, and you're starting here and you're going to be there. And it's because this process is dynamic. Mm-hmm. But going to lectures, going to conferences, you'll learn a lot of stuff from farmers on what they did to do well. I learned something at the High Plains No-Till Conference this year. Actually, I didn't learn something. I learned a ton of stuff in talking to people. A lot of really smart regenerative minds there, and just examples of what people are doing, successes and failures. If you go to a conference and it's only about the successes that people are having, you're in the wrong place. We've had failures. We've got to be able to talk about those, because I think it's more important. There's always this fear factor. Like, if you scare somebody to death of something that they're going to do, then they don't want to do it, right? Like, this happened just on a vacation that I was on a few years ago. My daughter was, I think, 4. We're in Mexico, and we're going to jump off a cliff. She's 4, right? And it's a pretty good one, like 18 feet or something. And I got up there and I was nervous. And I'm talking, there's kind of a lifeguard at the cliff to make sure it happens correctly. And I look over and like, Alex, you ready to jump? And she'd already jumped. And I was scared to death. Well, fast forward to now she's 10. So that, was 5-6 years ago. And same thing, we're hiking in the jungle to a waterfall. And we get to the waterfall and, Palucci was our guy that we were with, teddy bear in Spanish. And he says, yeah, you can climb right up there, and tells Alex. So what does she do? Goes climbing right up there. And she got to take the last step and fell and slid down the cliff. And as a dad, I was scared, but I look back to what happened to her when we were in Mexico, where she was not afraid of anything. She just bailed off the cliff. To now, this year, I don't think she'll jump off a rock again. And what we do is we scare people so that they don't want to try. And, I want to learn how people failed, but I don't want to make someone so afraid to try. Like, did this work? Yes and no. But you never, I just think it's so bad. Like, someone may get something out of my failure and make it better and fix it.
Yeah.
And I try to do that with other people. It's, ag is complicated. There are much easier careers. Building rocket ships is way simpler than farming. It just is. It's science. It's the dynamics of flight. Farming, you got to control the weather. You got to control the pest. You got millions of variables to control. And so we just throw chemicals at it to wipe out as many as possible. So then really all we need is sunlight and water. And that's not, building rocket ships is way easier.
Yeah.
Way less variables.
Yeah.
It's all science. Yeah, wish we could take every book that everybody has put together and take the best parts out and just make one Bible.
A little coffee table book.
Yeah, a little coffee table book. That's the excerpts from the best farmers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just, kind of what you mentioned is the whole idea of just not being afraid to fail in the first place. Like, just being able to have that willingness to try. And if it fails, and it probably will, but it's what you learn from it that you can apply, and that can go from farming and that can go to life,
It is, yeah, you get a lot out of it.
So, awesome. Cory, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation.
Yeah,
and where can people find you? If they have questions, if they want to get in touch, if they want to support Grass Valley Farms, how can they do that?
GrassValleyFarmsMT.com. The tough thing about farming is I don't have a lot of time to spend on social media, so I don't get to make a lot of videos. And so I rely on good people like you to tell our story. Our website, we're going to be doing some updates soon. Just haven't had it's been a busy winter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what we're doing. We're busy every day. I'm surprised. I mean, how many days did we try to get this together the time here? I think this is our 4th or 5th option to finally make it work.
Yeah.
So, we just keep plowing through. And call me. I mean, I enjoy talking on the phone. It's much easier for me. Everybody sees me with my earpiece on. They make fun of me for wearing it, but I can drive a tractor and I can talk. I can shoot Colombian ground squirrels and talk. I can drive to pick up machinery and talk. I can make compost and talk. But it's really hard for me to give a detailed answer in an email because I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I farm 10, 12 hours a day, and then I get to be dad for 3 or 4, and then I need to be husband for some time, and then I need to sleep to recover, and that happens every day. And so it's hard for me to actually get in the office and get a play, outside of paying the bills and everything else. Like, it's, in my cleaning company, I had hundreds of employees, and I've never worked so hard in my life as I do now, farming, because there's so many tasks to do, and it's dynamic. they change what we need and when we need it. It's not the same every year or every time of the season. And so, grassvalleyfarms.com, and don't be afraid, or grassvalleyfarmsmt.com, and don't be afraid to give me a call on the phone. Phone numbers on the website, phone numbers on Google. Definitely talk to people on every continent in most countries regarding farming, and happy to help any way I can.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I'll put that in the show notes too. Well, thank you, Cory. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I know that our audience is going to really love this conversation, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.